Have you ever just looked at the news and wondered why the same awful things, wars, political messes, seem to happen over and over again, no matter who's in charge? Well, today, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea. What if the problem isn't the people, but the systems they're trapped in?
So, our source material kicks things off with this bombshell of a statement. This war could be stopped today. Just let that sink in for a second. That simple sentence just shatters everything we're usually told about how complex and unavoidable these things are. And it forces us to ask a really tough question.
If it could be stopped, why isn't it? What on earth is actually keeping it going? And the answer, as we're about to find out, tells us so much about how power really works behind the scenes. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, here's our game plan. We've got 5 stops on this journey. First, we'll look at the idea that failure can actually be a feature of a system, not a mistake. Then we'll zoom out and see why the system is the real story we should be watching. We'll learn to decode the special language power uses. Look at what happens when bad things happen in plain sight with no consequences. And finally, we'll talk about what real courage and leadership look like in this mess.
Okay, Section 1. Let's start with a feeling I think we've all had. That sense of just complete frustration, watching a crisis just spiral and spiral. You know, the official story we always get is that these things are, well, they're just too complicated, right? Too chaotic for anyone to really get a handle on.
And that's the lie, isn't it? The idea that nobody's really driving the bus, that the situation is just complex, the outcome unfortunate. But this kind of language, it's a neat trick. It turns human choices into something that feels like an act of God, like a hurricane or something. But wars, political decay, these things don't just happen. They are the direct result of choices, a lot of them, all made inside a very specific machine.
And that brings us to the absolute core of this whole thing. If we really want to understand why these awful patterns keep repeating, we have to stop focusing so much on the personalities, the individual leaders, and start looking at the architecture, the system itself.
This quote right here is basically the thesis for our entire conversation. Human beings do not rise to the level of their ideals. They fall to the level of their systems. It's such a powerful idea. It means that good intentions, even the best character, can be completely overwhelmed by the structure you put them in. I mean, just think about it for a second. If the same exact pattern plays out with different leaders, different political parties, even different justifications, you're not looking at a string of bad luck or a bunch of bad apples. You are watching a system do what it's built to do.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, because here we can see the mechanics of that system. Just look at this breakdown. Starting a conflict is cheap. Showing restraint, that's expensive career-wise. Delaying a decision actually helps the momentum build. Bureaucracy spreads the blame so thin, no one feels responsible. And the language they use, it's designed to sand down any moral objections. Each one of these things isn't an accident. It's a design choice that makes continuing the path of least resistance.
All right, let's dig into that last point a little more, language. Because these systems don't just work on incentives and career pressure. No, they have their own special vocabulary, a kind of sanitized grammar, designed to keep the machine humming along without anyone feeling, well, too bad about it.
And this slide just lays it out so perfectly. Civilians were shredded becomes collateral damage occurred. The war is spreading becomes a regional spillover risk, and leaders chose to continue becomes the situation remains dynamic. You see, this isn't just jargon, this is operational conditioning. It's a way to remove the human reality, the moral horror, from the equation. It lets an organization process atrocities as if they were just items on a spreadsheet.
Okay, so now we're going to connect the dots. We're going to see how this exact same systemic logic, this machine-like thinking, doesn't just apply to wars in faraway places. It applies right here at home, to how our own governance works, or doesn't. The engine is exactly the same.
This quote just completely dismantles the way we usually think about corruption or institutional failure. We imagine this secret room of evil villains smoking cigars and plotting. But this suggests something so much more real and honestly way more terrifying. You don't need a conspiracy. All you need are aligned incentives pushing everyone in the same bad direction.
So in the system that makes war, this is what system obedience looks like. Leaders and officials, they stop asking, what is the right thing to do to end this? And instead they ask, what is survivable for my career? What statement do I need to make to stay on the team? It's a total inversion of leadership.
And boom, here's the mirror image in domestic politics. Oath as theater.
You have officials who talk a big game about the law and the Constitution, but their actions are all about eroding it. Their real loyalty isn't to their oath, it's to their party, to their own career. See? It's the exact same behavior, just in a different setting. The system's logic wins.
And this gets us to the most crucial point, I think. The real scandal today isn't some deep, dark secret. It's that the failure is happening right out in the open. We can all see it. But the institutions that are supposed to be the brakes on the system, they just don't act. And it's that visibility, without any consequence, that absolutely demolishes public trust.
So, if the problem is a system that's literally designed to have this destructive momentum, what in the world is the solution? Well, this last section offers up a pretty radical new way of thinking about leadership. It's not about managing the flow, it's about having the guts to get in its way.
This quote is a gut punch, in the best way. If you occupy a node of power inside a destructive system, your duty is not to narrate the machine elegantly. Your duty is to apply friction. This is a direct shot at the idea of the leader as just a smooth manager or a commentator. It says, no, if you're inside a machine that's hurting people, your job is to be the thing that makes it grind to a halt.
And these are the practical steps. This is what that kind of real leadership looks like. Acting against what's convenient for the system. Deliberately imposing friction where the machine wants to flow. Choosing to focus on the human cost instead of procedural comfort. Speaking plainly, using real words to bring morality back into the room. And number 5, being willing to absorb the personal professional hit that comes from interrupting that momentum.
So we really have to unlearn this idea that leadership is just about managing momentum, about skillfully steering the ship along whatever course it's already on. Because let's be honest, when that course is heading straight for a cliff, management is just a fancy word for being complicit.
And there it is, the final, powerful takeaway. In times of systemic failure, true leadership isn't about managing the machine. It is the willingness to break it. It's about having the courage to stop things, to force the system to confront its own contradictions and live up to the values it claims to have, even if that means shattering the comfortable, easy momentum that everyone else is riding. It's an incredibly high bar for sure, but it might be the only one that actually matters.